Hello and welcome into another episode of the Dynasty After Party here on Club Fantasy. My name is Michael Sicoli. We are diving into three more teams today in the Look Inside series: the Jets, the Vikings, and the Broncos. One team that did not exactly get to the team we expected to see last season. Another one that looks quite different. And the Broncos, what are the Broncos? I'm sure we'll be diving into that, me and Joel, just in a little bit. So without further ado, let's see you on the other side of the intro. You know, that intro will never get old to me, Joel. I just love the music. And happy Father's Day to you and yours and to all of our wonderful listeners out there. How are you doing today?
I'm all right. I guess to talking backstage, I was out of town last week and caught a little case of the airplane illness, I think. So, but the people need their after party, so we're going to power through. And happy Father's Day, everyone. Appreciate you joining.
This is a trooper right here. This is a trooper. This is what a trooper looks like. This man putting life and limb on the line for our fantasy needs here to talk about the Jets, Vikings, and Broncos, just as we all desperately
It's not
need.
quite that bad, but
I know, I'm just messing with you. But either way, yeah, we're going to continue our Look Inside series here of the amazing articles, which you should all check out on clubfantasyffl.com. clubfantasyffl.com. You can check out the three articles that we're talking about today, except we're taking a dynasty angle as opposed to a bit of the redraft one. Our lovely Joel Wirth here wrote about the Vikings and Justin Jefferson. Andrew Metcalf wrote about Javonte Williams and that interesting situation in Denver. And, of course, we're going to talk about the Jets with Matt Record writing that one. The Patriots fan taking a dive into the AFC East. So we're going to dive into all of that real soon. We touched on it a little bit last week, but since it's important enough, is there any are there any and do you want to talk about any of this extension, this wide receiver money that has been commanded around? We touched on it a little bit at the top of last show. But obviously Justin Jefferson got his extension. We're still waiting on CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, and seeing where the rest of the chips lie.
I think the big news this week is that T. Higgins signed his franchise tender, which is good. So that means there'll be no holdout. Holdouts are what they are, but they usually end up leading to injury and decreased performance. So that's a good thing. I don't think he'll be with Cincinnati beyond this year, but he should be productive this year. So don't expect him to lose any dynasty value going forward. Trevor Lawrence is interesting. Got 275, which is what I said Jordan Love was going to get as soon as the salary cap went up. Kind of matches Joe Burrow for the highest per year average salary. I think the only holdup with Jordan Love right now is the guaranteed money, because the Packers don't like guaranteeing money, or they historically have not guaranteed money beyond the first year in the signing bonus. So I would get T-Law got 200 million of that 275 guaranteed. Wow. So that's quite a bit. So you're not doing that in one season. So I think that's the holdup on the Love deal right now, is how much guaranteed money he's going to get. And then you got, what does this do to Tua and Dak? Whether the Cowboys are just going to, let Dak play it out and see what happens and take their chances. I don't know. And the Dolphins, they need to make a decision on Tua. So, I mean, what else are you going to, he's not the greatest quarterback in the world, but you need to do something, and you can't, this is a team that's built to win now. So I can't imagine they're not going to re-sign him.
Yeah. I mean, it's what they want to do. I think a lot of it also comes down to Tyreek Hill. I mean, there's not much left on the Tyreek train compared to what he told us of, wanting to retire, early into his 30s as opposed to late, which who knows whether he had a choice in the matter, but that was always the timeline for him. And matching that timeline means matching it with Tua Tagovailoa. So you'd assume that deal gets done. I feel more confident about that than I do about the Dak deal, honestly. I think Dak's not going to get done. I don't think Dak gets his deal this summer. It's possible he gets one in the offseason, but I think if I have to put my chips down, that this is too much money for Jerry Jones to chip out again for Dak Prescott when they haven't had any sustainable success since the last time he signed his contract. So I'm curious, do you think that's the way it'll fall out, or do you think it'll be a little bit different?
I kind of do. It's just that they have had sustained success. They just haven't had any playoff success.
Meaningful success.
Yeah. And I think that's the real sticking point. And I think it's a bit like the Clayton Kershaw situation in baseball, where he was a great regular season pitcher and a terrible postseason pitcher until he wasn't, until he had a really good run. So, and I think, I don't think there's any reason Dak can't be a good playoff quarterback. It's, what are you putting around him? And, they said they were going all the way and they've done nothing this offseason. So that's a very interesting situation. That's a team I think is going to take a major step back this year.
Yeah. I mean, there's every reason to. You not only not making moves to upgrade and losing a few pieces, but you also lose Dan Quinn and that defense. So we'll see what happens with Dallas, and we'll touch on that obviously when we get into the Dallas Cowboys for the Look Inside series. But we'll be jumping into the Jets, Vikings, and Broncos just in a little bit here. But first, I have something that I need to tell you guys, and Josh brought it up last week. Dynasty Nerds. This is just easily one of my favorite groups out there. It's where I first started watching film, so it's always something important to me. So I got a message, and I got to ask you guys, if you want to take your dynasty teams to a championship, if you want to stack those dynasty championships, you got to hear about this partnership that we've brought up with Club Fantasy and Dynasty Nerds. They're one of the most trusted sources for dynasty advice and dynasty tools. Their Nerd Score helps identify rookies with high ceilings and longevity, and that's what we talk about in the show. It's longevity and ceiling. We're not shooting for floor to keep you in contention for years. If what you're looking for is film on rookies, like I said, there's plenty to look at in their all-22 film room. It's so much better than what you could find on YouTube. It's just well worth it. So they even have a dynasty trade calculator, which we always love to look at just for that third opinion. That can help you find values across the season, understand how to value players across an ever-changing dynasty landscape. And those are just a few of the tools that we have time to offer you to mention to you today. So just head to Dynasty Nerds yourself. You can get 15% off one of their subscription plans at checkout using code Club Fantasy. You'll see that on the ticker throughout the show here, using that code Club Fantasy to get 15% off your subscription. It's how you win your dynasty leagues. It's a big one to do. It's a good tip to have and pair with the information that we have on this show, Joel, because we love dynasty. And ultimately, we all get the same agenda here. And Mr. Scampers, good morning to you, sir. Always good to see you.
Morning, Scampers. Thanks for checking in.
Always good to see. Well, without further ado, Joel, I say we jump right into the team of the hour. The team that was meant to be the New York Jets. Curiously returning pretty much the whole coaching staff here of Nathaniel Hackett, still kind of calling plays, if you've seen the practice reports, which are interested in, of him and I forget who else they brought in, the offensive assistant. Was it Todd Monken? Did they bring in Todd Monken?
He's still in Baltimore.
No, yeah. I'll look it up in a second. But either way, Nathaniel Hackett being the offensive coordinator, we know Robert Saleh is the head coach, and we still got Joe Douglas in the front office. Same regime, despite the colossal flop of last season, 4 snaps into the year with Aaron Rodgers' Achilles. Either way, we're a year later. He's seemingly healthy. Everyone's seemingly back. They've added Mike Williams. What are you overall expecting from the New York Jets? Do you think this is going to be the year?
No.
From the Packers.
I mean, we're already seeing the Aaron Rodgers offseason nonsense. I mean, that the all team first, everything. I'm going to show up for training camp and OTAs that lasted predictably one season, and that was it. Do we trust him to be healthy? I mean, he's 40. He's going to turn 41 in December. Coming off an Achilles injury that cost him the entire season. Obviously, the in-season comeback was nonsense. He wasn't that good 2 years ago, right? It's been 3 years since he was like a productive, good, elite NFL quarterback. So at his age, I don't see any reason. Like, they should be better than last year just because their defense is really good and Zach Wilson was abominable and he should just be better than that by default. But I don't think this is a situation where he's good enough to elevate a team and take them to like a championship level, even like a division contending. I still think they're behind the Dolphins and the Bills in that division. So no, I don't think this is their year at all.
I tend to agree, it's interesting because I think Vegas is kind of on the same line with us. Of the win line right now for the Jets, last I checked, was 9.5 wins, which with a healthy Aaron Rodgers, you expect that to be higher. You expect it to be at least 10.5, maybe even more potentially with, what we see as a top 5 defensive unit, the return of a MVP caliber quarterback. You add Mike Williams, but on the topic of Mike Williams, I worry about this supporting cast in New York. It's still the same. They didn't really to me. I love Mike Williams to death. I really do, but I'm viewing him as a 0 until I get him on the field, and he's coming off yet another injury, and it's just I have worries. I want to quickly take a step to say hi to Jerry Bagshaw. I don't know if we've seen that name before, so it's awesome to see if we have a new viewer here. Good to see you, Jerry. Gator, as always, awesome to see you. And once again, Mr. Camper's bringing up the big point of Happy Father's Day to all of our listeners tuning in now. Awesome to see everybody, and that is really funny, the IV, because it is awfully early for the IV. You got all the rest of the day to go. But either way, on the topic of the Jets and Mike Williams, I want to hear your opinion on this receiver room. That they added Mike Williams, they added Malachi Corley in the draft. And that's really it. Xavier Gibson's expected to walk into camp as the wide receiver 3 or fight for that spot. Allen Lazard's still there, I guess, technically, because he has to be. It's not the greatest room outside of Garrett Wilson.
No, it's not. It's not at all. I mean, this is not a team that's filled with talent at all. I think we both like Mike Williams, but like you said, we got to see it before we believe it. The guy hasn't produced in 3 years, a year and a half or 2.5 years, basically. So Garrett Wilson's a stud. Breece Hall's a stud. After that, it's a bunch of no-name. We've heard Aaron Rodgers kind of pump up Malachi Corley, but he wasn't a very highly regarded prospect.
It's the biggest offseason BS quote I've seen so far. Of Aaron Rodgers saying that Malachi Corley was his favorite receiver in the draft. BS. You just didn't watch half of them because you knew you weren't getting them.
Exactly.
That's nonsense.
I mean, let's remember that going back a couple of years ago, the Packers, he basically forced the Packers to draft Amari Rodgers instead of Amon-Ra St. Brown because he was friends with Randall Cobb. So take whatever BS he says with, shakers full of salt. It's nonsense. Outside of if Mike Williams can't come back, and he's coming off an ACL, right? So we don't expect,
I don't think he's week 1 ready. It's going to be very close.
Whether it is or not, I mean, he's still a year. He's coming off an ACL injury, so we don't expect full production from him. We're kind of pumping up Tyler Conklin just on the potential volume, just because there's nobody else there. I mean, I could see Garrett Wilson getting a Devontae Adams level target share.
Oh, he'll be great. He's going to be
from Rodgers, just because there's really nothing else there, and that this is a very straight up receiving tree. So there's just not much to get excited about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still all in on Garrett Wilson. I imagine you are as well. I think Rodgers is going to force feed him, and that's why it's part of why I was so in on Garrett Wilson last year, and while I'll continue to be so in on him because Alpha's eat, and he did his best with Zach Wilson, which is still better than honestly I thought he was going to do with Zach Wilson. So it's dire in New York still, but I'd say the hopes are still high, and I think a lot of that comes with the running game. I want to get into that in a second, but you mentioned Tyler Conklin. I like it. I don't want to like him, Joel, but I continue to grab him crazily in startups. And I know that, listen, I'm pulling for Jeremy Ruckert to take that job. Long Island kid, one of the best Long Island has produced. But I don't – I see the opportunity that Tyler Conklin has. He's now, 3 years in a row as a 71 reception guy. He feels like such a high floor tight end 6 type of – tight end 6, tight end 7, tight end 8. You're laughing at me. I think he gets to tight end 8. I think he could.
I could see it on volume, just like we said. There's just not much else in this offense, and they're probably going to have to, throw
in the red zone.
Yeah. I mean, we know that Aaron Rodgers wants to get his short touchdown passes, so he'll be an end zone target. I could see he's never going to be someone I'm excited to start, but
oh no,
he's probably going to be like Hunter Henry was last year, right? You look back at the end of the year, and he was tight end 8. And I never wanted to start him, but that's what he ended up being. So, yeah, wouldn't surprise me.
You just have to just rain on my parades, like Tyler Conklin.
No,
I
could, like I said, I could very much see looking back at the end of the year and going, well, yeah, he was tight end 9, and that's it is what it is.
Yeah, no, I
it's nothing I'm ever going to be excited about, but yeah,
it'll come down to
there's
the
volume
touchdown
case and there's a touchdown case. So yeah, if you can put those together, yeah, he could be a starter.
And especially in best ball is really what I'm looking at. Best ball versus cost, where I don't have to, if he has the 4-catch 25-yard game, it is what it is. But if I get a 6-catch 50 yards and a touchdown, I think that's well within the cards if Aaron Rodgers is what we expect him to be. Because I think that's something we're not talking about enough of, how often they're going to throw in the red zone. I really think, the ball goes in Aaron Rodgers' hands, and if Breece Hall is not catching it, then someone else is. So,
I'll say that, like, Robert Tonyan had a 12 touchdown season. Tyler Conklin's a better player than Robert Tonyan, so I could see it.
Yeah, Robert Tonyan, who we'll talk about in a little bit with the Vikings, maybe, Jill. But either way, this rushing attack. Let's take a second and talk about this Breece Hall kid. I don't know if you've heard about him, but he's around the RB2 in Dynasty overall right now, and some people will have him as the 1. Some people have him at the 3. Either way, he's consensus top 5. So Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis, the 5th round running back they added, and of course Israel Abanikanda. That is the running back room. And what are your thoughts on Breece Hall? Are we overvaluing him? Do we think he has an RB1 overall ceiling?
Yeah, absolutely. What did he catch? Like 80 balls last year? I think that goes kind of under the radars. Is his receiving volume was pretty massive last year, and I think we have to give him full credit for bouncing back and being kind of full strength a year after the ACL. It was a relatively clean ACL tear, but you go back a year ago, we were very concerned about him coming off the ACL, thinking he was going to be the same thing as Javonte Williams, who we'll talk about later, and he vastly outperformed Williams. So yeah, he deserves to be like McCaffrey, Bijan, Breece Hall, whatever order you want to put them in. They are the clear top 3, and I wouldn't blame you for putting him in any order you preferred.
Yeah, that's 76 receptions, by the way, was what Breece Hall had through 17 games last year. It's good. It's good to see 95 targets, which was first among running backs.
Yeah.
If you equate
that's
that
monstrous.
Out, it's 4.5 receptions per game is what he had. So if you add in full PPR another 4.5 points on pure receptions, without talking about yards or touchdowns or anything like that, it's huge. He's pulling in 35 receiving yards per game, and that's a good 10 points right there. It's a good 8 to 10 points that you're getting before you even talk about the rushing side of a running back. So
they did upgrade the offensive line for whatever it's worth. They brought in Tyron Smith, so it should be. Last year was atrocious. It should be at least middle of the road this year. So yeah, there's definitely a case for him to be the RB1, no question.
Yeah, I think that's more than fair. Now, I want to quickly get a take on on this backup situation. Is there a clear handcuff? Because right now, Braylon Allen's all the talk. Isaiah Davis was getting some of the love out of camp, getting a lot of positive reports. I think Abanikanda is going to get cut, but what do you think about who's going to get this RB2 job? Because we're looking at that for Dynasty. We have to.
Yeah, I think it's clearly Braylon Allen. There was a very polarizing prospect, very high ceiling prospect. Again, he's only 20. We've made this point multiple times. He's not going to turn 21 until the playoffs of this season. So very young. I think he's the clear handcuff. Isaiah Davis is just a guy. I agree with you. Abanikanda is going to get cut. So I think this backfield is Breece Hall and Braylon Allen going forward.
All right, I can put that in the books. Well, let's get a quick final take on the Jets here. What do you think? Over under 9.5 wins.
Under.
Okay, interesting. You should place that bet. I'm sure they're giving you plus odds right now, but yeah, that's okay. Yeah, fair enough. I think I lean with you. I'm praying that I'm waiting. I know the line will jump to 10.5 at some point when Aaron Rodgers is lighting up a preseason game. It will jump to 10.5, and then I'll take the under. 9.5 is awfully close. I still will. I think they get to 9, but we'll see. That'll be the fun part of this. So, all right, let's jump into the next team here. And the next team is the Minnesota Vikings. No coaching change here. It's still Kevin O'Connell, still Adolfo Menza in the front office, and it's still Kevin O'Connell calling the plays. So, same old, except for a different name under center, and that's J.J. McCarthy. Vikings traded him one spot to get the rookie quarterback out of Michigan. They have their new signal caller, letting Kirk Cousins walk to Atlanta. Let's start in the quarterback room. I think there's no other place to start because that's the big question mark right now is Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy. Who starts more games this year?
McCarthy.
Ooh.
We're
not ready for this. What this USC kid's gonna bring.
They have a week 6 bye. I don't think there's any way that McCarthy's not the starter coming out of the bye. I think this is gonna be a really bad defensive team. I know they've made some upgrades, but they lose Neil Hunter. Like this team, like we talked about the Brian Flores defense. Like teams had caught on to this defense by the end of the season last year. So I think that was kind of a one-trick pony, and they just don't have the back end to kind of hold up and do what he wants to do. They brought in some parts and Grenard and drafted Dallas Turner. Is Turner ready to play relative to like a Latu or Jared Verse?
And his Greener, I think that's the other.
Yeah, exactly. He's got one good season. He's nowhere. I don't think he's anywhere near as good as Neil Hunter was.
I don't think so.
So yeah, if teams just figured out last year that if you can hold up against the blitz, their secondary can't hold up. I don't love their linebacker group either. So like they brought in Andrew Van Ginkel, who I like a lot, but he's hurt too. So
and now
I think this could
as well.
Yeah, I just think this could be a really bad defense, and I think this is a team that could is Sam Darnold. Even if McCarthy's not ready, is Darnold the quarterback you need that can kind of keep up in a shootout? And I don't think the answer to that question is yes. So I don't think there's any way that even if Darnold is a starter coming into the season, that he's the starter coming out of the bye.
Well, if we think the defense is going to be poor, and that would mean taking a step back from last year where they took a considerable step forward. What do you think? Do you think that's going to equate to good volume for this offense, or do you think it's going to still be kind of evened out by the drop in quarterback quality?
No, I do. I mean, if you look at, and I made this point in the article on Jefferson, it's like he was producing even with, the guys that they were, Nick Mullins, obviously not Jaron Hall, but Josh Dobbs.
Mr. Butter is saying all the right things in the chat. I have a new favorite person. Go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you want to get your comment put on the screen, just pump up Sam Darnold.
No happening.
Sicoli all over it. I do think that this offense can sustain volume. I think it's a team that's going to get into a lot of shootouts. So this is an offense I'm pretty excited about for this year, even with the, obviously going from Cousins to either a rookie or Sam Darnold is a step back, but I still think this is going to be a very productive offense. Like we'll talk about Hawkinson in a little bit. I'm nervous about him and when he comes back, but like once they get to full strength, this could be a really good offense.
Yeah, I mean the pieces are all there, right? I mean they lost their wide receiver 3 in KJ Osborne, who's now in New England, but it's a wide receiver 3. They have guys they like Jalen Naylor. I think is a decent dynasty stash right now. Which listen, it's next to irrelevant. It's a free name on the wire, but somebody that made a lot of noise in camp last year and is once again making noise in camp this year. Just was injured, never really got a chance to show it, but wide open wide receiver 3 role. We'll see what happens there. But Jordan Addison, and Justin Jefferson, we all know Justin Jefferson is what Justin Jefferson is. The only thing I'll ask about him is he the wide receiver 1 in Dynasty?
Yes.
Okay. I was wondering if you prefer.
For me, he is.
Him. Okay. Fair enough. I think I agree, and I treat it like Patrick Mahomes of if he doesn't finish wide receiver 1, he'll finish wide receiver 4, and I'll be okay taking that 3 spot difference. And we can brush him aside because we know that. But Jordan Addison, with the change in quarterback, are you at all worried about him? Because I don't think his price has changed all that much. I don't think perception has dipped, but Kirk Cousins was a very, very good quarterback. So do you think that this drop off is going to spell, too many inconsistencies for Jordan Addison? Because I worry about that as a fan of Addison too.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be the most consistent receiver, but I think he will have enough spike weeks to kind of justify his being a starter. If you look at last season, he got off to the great start, and then Cousins got hurt, and then his production kind of went with it. So was it the quarterback? Was it the rookie wall? Was it a combination of both? Either way, I like, again, going back to like McCarthy, whether it's McCarthy or Darnold, they're both going to be better than what they were putting out there at the end of the last year with Josh Dobbs and Mullins and Jaron Hall. I mean, that was just a disaster. So I had to trade for Josh Dobbs, and Josh Dobbs is terrible. So it was just a mess. So yeah, I think he'll be in better. He's only 22. I think this, second full season in the league. I'm not expecting a breakout, but I'm expecting more of what we saw in the first 5 or 6 weeks than what we saw kind of in the back, 8 or 9 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful. I'm a little bit worried. What I kind of view Jordan Addison this year, maybe it's wrong, but I almost view him as how Devonta Smith was this past season, right? Where we were frustrated. We were ultimately frustrated with Devonta Smith, and sometimes he looked great, and sometimes it all worked out, but other times it didn't. And I feel like it's going to be hard to predict for Jordan Addison this year, where maybe kind of similar to what we were talking about. He finishes at wide receiver 27 or something like that, maybe even draft him at wide receiver 30. But do you really feel like you got a value out of it if you didn't know when to start? Like, I almost view him as a lesser Mike Williams if you take away the injury risk. Not in terms of play style or anything like that, but in terms of what he can bring to you on a week-to-week basis, where sometimes it's just not going to come. And I feel like as much as I love Jordan Addison, I really worry about that unless my Sam Darnold prediction comes true. Because I don't think J.J. McCarthy is going to have a terrific rookie season. Maybe
I think Devonta Smith is a fair comp. I think Devonta's better, just a better player. But production-wise, I could see that. But I think he's going to be a guy that you just have to, there's going to be some lows, but you got to stick with him just to, to get the highs. Yeah. I don't think he's like a best ball only type like Gabe Davis or something. I don't think so. He's going to have enough target volume and enough production. This is a fairly, we'll see how Aaron Jones integrates into the offense. But we talked about Jalen Naylor. Is that someone you have trust in as a wide receiver 3? They're not going to have Hawkinson for the first. You would think first half of the year, yeah. So I think there's going to be plenty of target volume, especially early. So yeah, I'm not super worried about. Addison being someone that I'm taking a 0 from.
Yeah. And I think the big reason for that is this Kevin O'Connell scheme, which is why I was so excited about this hire in the first place, is because of how much they trust the receivers to run routes. Jordan Addison, the wide receiver 2 for this team, was 12th in routes run among wide receivers last year. That's pretty damn good. That's pretty damn good. Yeah. Good opportunity at the very least. And I don't think that's going to change.
They run a ton of 3 wide receiver sets. So
yes. And adding, because it's the McVay system, and adding Aaron Jones, to me, as much as I love Aaron Jones, they're not going to give Aaron Jones 20 carries. That's just not. It's not what they want to do. It's not what they can do. And yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what the Vikings look like this year, because I love Kevin O'Connell. I love this coaching staff, but it's a big change under center, and I think it'll be very curious to watch. But that running back room, I think, bears talking about. I feel like it's one of the more under-talked about rooms in the NFL. Ty Chandler, Aaron Jones, don't care about anyone else behind him of the Dwayne McBrides of the world. But Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler, what do you think about this duo? Ty Chandler getting a little bit of love from the teammates after a nice little run last year. Aaron Jones obviously getting paid to come to Minnesota.
Yeah, I think as long as you manage your expectations, I think they're both buys. Aaron Jones is like we've gone through 2 coaching staffs who have said that Aaron Jones is not a bell cow level back who can't, they should not take, like you said, he's not going to get 20 touches a game, nor should he, but he's, hella efficient. He's
Oh yeah,
as
he's awesome.
efficient as any running back in the league. So he's going to make the most of those touches. He will be productive when he's out there. The question is, how many games is he out there for? Is it 8? Is it 10? Is it is it 15? Maybe he only misses a couple games. I kind of think that being on turf is not necessarily going to be the best thing for him. So I'm nervous. So that's why I think Ty Chandler's a buy at his price as well, because Aaron Jones has proven the last couple of years that he's good. He's basically James Conner at this point in his career, right? He's going to miss at least 4 games a year. And Chandler, like you said, there's nothing behind him. He's the clear 2. He's the clear handcuff. So he's going to be the guy if and when Jones misses any time. He will also get, he's not going to be a 0 in the games when Jones is in the lineup, because again, it's not a back that teams think they can give a full workload share to. So he's going to have opportunities even when Jones is playing. So I think Ty Chandler is kind of really underrated at this point as a wide or running back 3-4 or something like that.
I'm 100% with you, and I kind of wish I made it more of a priority to get into my startups, and I might send a few offers out as well, because I like what Ty Chandler put on film last year. I liked what he did. I think he's a quality player. I don't know if he's anything special, but I think he can certainly get the job done. And Aaron Jones, the one thing aside from the health that we all know about and what you just talked about, he played less than 50% of snaps last year on his when he in games he played on average. So we know this about Aaron Jones, is that he's going to split with somebody. We know that somebody is Ty Chandler, and we know that Aaron Jones has a high chance of missing games. So even if you don't take advantage of that, like you said, the 4 games that Aaron Jones might miss, and you might not need Ty Chandler for those games because of the depth you have in your team, someone will. And that offers a terrific sell opportunity. The second Ty Chandler becomes a starter, and we have to assume that will happen at some point, even if it's short term. So, and he could have standalone value as well. I wouldn't be surprised if he had standalone value at all. So that'll be fun to look at. Now, I want to ask the disgusting question, because I won't lie, Joel, I am disgustingly fascinated by the tight end 2 situation on this team. I genuinely want to tackle. I don't know why. I want to look at the Vikings were reportedly blown away by Robert Tonyan's workout. They signed Josh Oliver to a $21 million deal. I know it's mainly blocking based, but we acknowledge that TJ Hawkins is going to miss half the season. We know that TJ Hawkinson commanded a lot of volume last year, and that's because he's TJ Hawkinson. But there's enough volume in this offense, in theory, for the tight end to be relevant. Do you think Robert Tonyan could have a little bit of a revival? He did go to Chicago, and Chicago is a death trap. Okay. No. Confirm no. No chance.
No. You say a revival from what? He was never good. He just had that random 12 touchdown season. So no, I don't think Robert Tonyan is good. Josh Oliver, like you said, is a blocking tight end. A poor man's Dawson Knox, fantasy irrelevant. The question is, when does Hawkinson get back? And is he tore his ACL on Christmas Eve last year? So even if he comes back in October, that's still only 10 months away from the injury. So I'm not expecting anything from him this year. But yeah, so this would be a really interesting spot if they had signed someone who had some value. But unfortunately they didn't. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, still, I mean, right now we don't really get a ton of reports on injuries and stuff like that. But a month ago, the most recent report we had was that there wasn't a timeline for return, which isn't surprising. He not only tore his ACL, but he tore his MCL as well.
Yeah, there's no way he doesn't start the year on PUP. No way.
Yeah. No, there's next to no chance, which is why I bring up that backup tight end situation, because I do think we're going to see. I do think we're going to see Tonyan run routes. If that's not relevant,
oh, for sure.
Yeah, if it's not relevant, it's not relevant. But he's going to be out there, and I think he's going to have a larger than expected role, despite his late addition to the team relative to everyone else. And Chicago is Chicago, so.
I think what you could see is a lot of what Green Bay did, and them having Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler on the field at the same time, and splitting Aaron Jones out and making him the slot seam receiver. So I think that's more likely than Oliver or Tunyon being productive.
Yeah, that's very, very possible. Very, very possible. Now I'll ask you the same question I asked you with the Jets here. Win total for the Vikings. The line is set at 7.5. Over, under. I'll take the under. I think it's a tough division. I'm going to take it at that 7-win mark.
I do think it's a very tough division, but I think they're going to, I think O'Connell's a good enough coach that they're going to get over that.
I like him a lot. I do.
So yeah, like if it was 8.5, I would really struggle, but I think it's 7. Like I think they're an 8-9 team. So yeah, I would have to take the over on 7.5. I can't, I don't see a scenario where they're just bad, where there's, really terrible, unless McCarthy just falls flat on his face. And can't move an offense, but I don't think that's the case. I think this offense is too good. It's just too talented. Their offensive line's pretty good. It's a top half offensive line in the league. So yeah, I just don't see a scenario where they're just terrible, where they're a sub 7-win team.
So you bring up all this McCarthy. If McCarthy's good, McCarthy's playing 3 games this year, Joel. Sam Darnold, I'm going to once again bring up Mr. Butter in the chat here. Come back, play the year. You can book it, put your house on it. I'm going to put my house on it after this show. Listen, we didn't totally touch on the QB room outside of how many, what we expect to happen. Do you think either of these guys will carry fantasy relevance? Maybe mid-end QB2? We're talking about the volume. We're talking about the volume. We're talking about Jefferson. We're talking about Jordan Addison.
I like McCarthy enough that I think he can be a system quarter. Like what's the difference between him and Brock Purdy? Like I think they're really similar quarterbacks. So I think you put him in that system, I think he'll be just fine. So yeah, I think McCarthy's going to be I think by the end of this, by midseason, he'll be a back end kind of super flex level starter.
Yeah, Sam Darnold will be a top 5 starter. You heard it here first. Yeah, let's.
We're gonna note that.
Yeah, we can clip it. Let's jump on over to a team that is in such a weird situation, and frankly, I have no idea what to expect from the Denver Broncos. This team that has Sean Payton entering his second season. You've got Bo Nix coming into town. Not a ton of change, but a lot of change at the same time. Denver is in a bit of a wormhole in the AFC West. I don't even know what to expect from Denver. So you tell me, who should I expect to play under center? Who should I care? What is the situation with Bo Nix, Jarrett Stidham, Zach Wilson, who's apparently competing for the QB1 job?
I talked about how I don't think the Vikings are going to be a bad team. This could be a very bad team.
It could be.
Like this could be a really bad team, especially if Bo Nix doesn't, like if he's not ready. Like Jarrett Stidham was just terrible last year at the end of the season. You barely beat Easton Stick in a couple of games. I fully like Bo Nix would have to fall flat on his face to kind of not be the starter, just because that room is so bad with Zach Wilson and Stidham.
Yeah.
And there's just not much talent in the receiver group. It's like Sutton, who's, not happy with his contract for some reason. I mean, I guess he's only making $12 million a year, but yeah, for his level of production, he should take whatever he can get. Yeah, I just don't think there's much talent on this team. The defense is, they've got some talented players, but I don't think it's a very cohesive unit. So I don't know what Sean Payton's doing. I really don't. So yeah, I think that I think the AFC West could legitimately be the worst division in the league this year. I think there's Kansas City and 3 probably bad teams. So you might get a couple wins in division just by default, but I think this is a very, very bad team.
Yeah,
this is almost like guaranteed that this team's going to be in the top 5 picking next year.
Yeah, and I mean, that's it marks up an interesting point with Sean Payton, I think. We're all like, I don't think we talk about it enough, where this is like Sean Payton's been around forever. This is something he's never done. He's not taken a first-round quarterback and groomed him into the starting franchise quarterback. He signed Drew Brees, and they won a lot of games together. This is going to be him developing Bo Nix. This is going to be him trying to piece together an offense without many pieces, and they didn't really make any efforts to go out and get any. So they sent Judy out. They traded him away. You have Marvin Mims, who they spent a second-round pick on last year. You have Troy Franklin, who they spent a fourth-round pick on this year. But do you think there's going to be any relevance in this wide receiver 2 role that I feel like right now a lot of people are trying to take their stabs on? A lot of people are trying to get Mims. Do you think there's any value in this wide receiver 2 role? Because personally, I couldn't be less interested.
I tend to agree. It's like Mims, like, was a second-round pick last year and couldn't get on the field above little Jordan Humphrey and Brandon Johnson. He played less than 50% of the snaps in a team that, like, on an offense that loves to run 3 receivers. That's really bad. So yeah, I have zero hope for him. Franklin, yeah, he played with Bo Nix, but he went in the 4th round. So, how much confidence do they have? I think this whole situation is really a reflection of the picks they had to give up to get Sean Payton. It's like, was it worth it? I've never been that high on Payton as a coach. I think that one Super Bowl he won was just, carried on the back of Drew Brees and Michael Thomas, and Alvin Kamara, and one really good draft class. So yeah, I think I kind of regard him like I do Mike McCarthy and John Harbaugh, and that they're just, coaches who won a Super Bowl based on one super hot streak from a quarterback, and nothing to do with them. So yeah, I don't get why Denver wanted to go out of their way to kind of give up assets to bring him in as a coach. It just made no sense to me.
Yeah, it's when I was in college, we're doing a little panel where we had to come up with a topic to argue about, and I was arguing against Sean Payton, and my roommate was arguing for Sean Payton. I'd like to think I won, but we'll see how it all turns out. But Josh bringing out the only actual dynasty asset on the Broncos is Bo Nix. He'd be throwing a couple thirds for Sutton if he was contending, which I don't think the Sutton owner would send to you, honestly, for a couple thirds, but I understand why that's what you're offering. And maybe a second for Javonte, but that's it. And that is the running back room, I think, right now is the biggest thing to talk about. I just want to quickly, on the topic of Marvin Mims, since I have the numbers here, 7.4% target share on his 40.7% snaps. That's not negligible snaps, to be honest. He should be commanding a lot more than that if he's anything, but 7.4% for a player that we know won't hold red zone value is really tough to see work out. I am still interested in Troy Franklin. I think Troy Franklin could carve out a role.
By default.
He'll get an opportunity. And I think he's a quality player who has a lot of chemistry with Bo Nix. I don't know if he's great, but I think he's quality. So that's I think he's the one I'm looking at the wide receiver 2 spot. But this running back room is currently the talk of the town. Javonte Williams, who might be the odd man out, is the incumbent expected starter. You have Jaleel McLaughlin, the speedy phenom of last season, the UDFA. You added Blake Watson on day 3 that nobody should, or undrafted that nobody cares about. Apparently, Sean Payton loves him. You got Audric Estime on day 3. That is, I can't stand him, but he's on the team. And he got draft capital, so he'll be on the roster. So what do you expect from this running back room? Do you have any interest in it at all? Are you buying? Let me start with Javonte Williams, I should say. Are you buying or selling Javonte Williams? Because that's the one thing that we have no clarity on.
He's the only player on this offense outside of Nix that I'm kind of remotely interested in. And if you go back,
gosh,
yeah, like last year, he was coming off the ACL, very serious multiple ligament injury.
MCL, yeah, whole thing.
And like last year, we didn't expect him to do anything, and he didn't do well, but he was, he made it through the season kind of unscathed. So, that should be all we wanted to see last year, was him getting through the season, especially in a bad offense, right? He just didn't have the opportunity to kind of excel. So I think there's, that post ACL bump that I think he should get. So, and again, Joe Lombardi's still running the offense. He's, funneled pass targets to Austin Eckler when he was in San Diego, Los Angeles. And Javonte, we saw a couple of years ago before the injury, like that Monday night game against Seattle when they opened the season, and he had 14 targets, 14 receptions, something like that. I mean, just some absurd numbers. So he can be a volume reception back. And so I just think that there's going to be a lot of like garbage time and a lot of hurry up in this offense. I don't know how much structure there's going to be. So I think he's going to be the guy you want on the field most of all. McLaughlin's going to get some run as probably the primary, third down passing back. I'm like you. I don't have any hope for Audric Estime being anything more than a poor man's AJ Dillon. So yeah, like Javonte's, I'm kind of interested if his price is cheap enough. I'm interested in bringing him in. Now I did the Best Ball show a couple of weeks ago with Gator and a friend of the show, Nate Polvote, was on there. Obviously, Nate's in Denver. He kind of intimated that Sean Payton doesn't like Javonte Williams, so that makes me nervous because Nate's pretty plugged in, knows what's going on out there. But like I said, outside of Nick's and just his ability to kind of put up some garbage time numbers, Javonte is really the only player in this offense that I'm interested in at all.
And Javonte's, I love Javonte Williams to death. I thought he was a fantastic prospect. I thought he was a true 3-down guy, and I still think that. My worry is exactly what you brought up with what Nate said about Sean Payton didn't draft Javonte Williams, and I think I worry that he's going to relegate him to an early down role, and for a team that isn't going to be on the field that much on offense and is going to struggle on offense, and he'll get goal line touches, but how many goal line touches will there be in Denver? I worry. I love Javonte Williams to death, so I'm trusting the talent to find it out. And I completely agree with you that we should be buying a dip because of what we expected last year is what we got, and now we should expect more. But I'm really worried about how Sean Payton views Javonte Williams' role, because he's brought in every other part of this team. He's brought in Jaleel McLaughlin as a UDFA. He brought in Audric Estime as a day 3 guy. Javonte Williams is the only running back on this room that is part of the old staff. So I do worry about that a little bit. But he's also a great receiver. Like he has such soft hands. He can do everything. So like I'm still more of a buy. I'm willing to send that second for him, and I probably will at some point. And I probably should now, considering people are saying he's on the roster bubble. But I do have my concerns about Denver, and it almost feels like a team that I'm going to look back on saying I should have been hands off the entire situation.
Yeah, if Javonte gets kind of pigeonholed into that Mark Ingram role, this is not the team you want to be in.
That's what I'm saying.
Not the team Mark Ingram role on
an inefficient offense would not be appealing.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's my concern. I think, like you said, I think the talent is going to, assuming he's healthy and assuming he's kind of all the way back, then again, what other options does this offense have? Like, you can try to scheme guys, but your wide receiver 2 is a guy who couldn't get on the field, had a 7% target share last year. Your wide receiver 3 is a 4th round pick. Yeah. I'm sure you're going to want to talk about Greg Dulcich. He may not make the team. So what else are you going to do? What else are you going to do on offense if it's not Javonte Williams? And like Jaleel McLaughlin had nice statistical season, but I think that guy's a candidate to get exposed with more touches, right? He's just not that good.
Yeah.
There's a lot, like, Twitter's going to just completely dump on me, but I think
he's an uber athlete.
I think he's exposed. He is, but he's really small. So
yeah,
I don't trust him in the Alvin Kamara role. So, if you give, I think he's a guy with, you give him 100 touches a season, he can be fine. But, you try to give him more than that, I think he's getting exposed. And I don't think he's a guy who can handle volume.
Yeah. And I tend to agree with you on that. And that's also why our impression of Jalen McLaughlin is much, much, much more positive than what he even did on the field. Yeah, he looked good when he was out there, but he didn't play much. He like
Right.
even when we saw his role ramp up, we saw it ramp back down to that 20% snap roll at the end of the season. So I think Joel McLaughlin's getting a little bit overdrafted right now, even though I took him in one because he's last on my queue 3 rounds after I put him on there. But yeah, I tend to agree that I'm not going to be taking a stab on McLaughlin too much. I'll take a grab on Javonte Williams if the price dips enough, which it looks like it will. Because when you Google his name, fun fact, one article says he's looking for an extension. The other one says that he's on the roster bubble. So it's fantastic news that we have coming out here in June. But since you brought it up, Joel, and I didn't bring it up, you brought it up, but Greg Dulcich, who still is not practicing, is working to get his way back from the hamstring and foot injury as of 4 days ago. He's nearing a return.
Is this the same hamstring you hurt like 3 years ago?
I don't think that's relevant. That's not, that doesn't. So yeah, it's Is it time for me to call it quits? So
I think it's going to have to be when he doesn't make the roster. He doesn't seem like a Peyton guy, so
he'll make the roster. Adam Troutman picked up an injury, and actually, you know what? That brought up a lot of people I saw a bit of a surge on maybe not as much on Twitter, but I saw in a few of my drafts. Is it Lucas Krull? Something like that. Krull, that's it. I'm not saying I'm interested. I think he's more of a blocker. He's 25 freaking years old. But some people I saw him jump a little bit in ADP over the last weekend with the Adam Troutman news of him suffering potentially a serious injury. You had Greg Dulcich on the roster bubble, and you got this rookie or third-year player.
Second year.
Yeah.
Second year. Third.
Second year player. That is still on the roster and obviously was a Sean Payton pick. So what do you think there's any chance for someone like that to be worth a stash?
No. They don't like people want there to be a Jimmy Graham in this offense. There isn't one. They don't have one, right? That like Dulcich can't stay healthy. We don't even know if he's good, right? He's never played, so we don't know if he's good or not. Even if he is healthy, he's had the same hamstring injury for 3 years. Krull and Troutman are both blocking tight ends. Like they're both, we made the Dawson Knox comparison earlier. These guys are both dime store Dawson Knoxes. So that's your best case scenario is you get an end zone touchdown. How many of those are going to be? So yeah, I there's no Jimmy Graham on this roster. It's he's not coming through the door. So yeah, you want to take a stab, go for it. But I'm not wasting a roster spot on either of those guys.
Yeah, I'm bringing him up because Sean Payton has said some favorable things about him in the last week. And listen, I'm with you. There's a 99% chance that nothing happens. But if I'm going to take a stab on someone, I don't mind doing it on the second year, third year type of guys that have made on their way on the roster, have stayed on the roster, it's only the second year, but in terms
there's a case that the best thing to happen to Greg Dulcich may be that he does get cut and goes to a different team. I don't think it's going to happen here.
Yeah, no, it gets. Yeah, I don't think it's happening with Greg Dulcich either. I think there's a small chance that Krull could have some streaming value at times, a tiny, tiny, tiny chance, but nothing that you need to totally worry about now outside of the deepest of tight end premium leagues and the deepest of rosters where you can stash them in that 25th round. How about that? How does that sound? 25th round, 23rd round?
Let's make it 30th.
That's okay. We can make it 30th. Somewhere between 23 and 30 is where you can find Lucas Krull as a terrific value in your Dynasty startups. But, yeah, have we missed any part about this Denver team that is just so attractive to us?
There's just not much to talk about. We've probably spent more time talking about them than it is. We've been talking about them for 16 minutes, and that's probably more than they deserve.
Yeah, and I think that's reflected by their win total. Do you want to guess what it is before I tell you?
5.5.
It's 5.5. There you go. Good. So it's right on the. You're right there with Vegas. What are you taking the over or under on that?
Under.
Wow. So now, without looking it up at all, I have to imagine that will be the worst finish under Sean Payton if they finish with 5 or 4 wins in Do you think that? I don't think he ever had a 4-win season, 5-win season with the Saints. I'd have to check that.
Nah, I mean, they weren't that bad even before Breeze got there. So yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think so.
Yeah, so that's what Vegas is calling for, though, and we see that with rookie quarterbacks or decrepit veterans with questionable staffs, and the whole situation isn't great in Denver. But they did rid themselves of the Russ contract, and that honestly is the biggest takeaway of the offseason for Denver. So either way, I think I'm going to take the over. I'm going to say they have 4 wins through the first 14 weeks of the season, and then they get 2 at the end. Like you said, the weak division.
Whoever they play in week 18 just rests all their starters.
Well, not even that. It'll be Vegas with like Aiden O'Connell with Devontae Adams holding out, and yeah, I'll say they grab that 6th win in week 18 because Bo Nix steps up in the back half of the season. All right, I am a Bo Nix guy.
Cincinnati week 17.
Okay,
I know this from best ball. So, what's their end? So you get Indy at the Chargers and at Cincinnati in 15, 16, 17.
Well, that's not great. What about 18?
Must be the Raiders. Either the Raiders or the Chiefs, I would think. I don't know.
Please don't do. It is. That's not going to come up on a quick Google search, which means I'm going to have to move on from the joke I'm making. That's okay.
I'm still taking the under.
Yeah, that's fair, and I'll take the over, but 6 wins, and I'll be floored if they get to 7. Yeah. I'd be much less surprised if they finish with 4 wins than if they finish with 7. So yeah, that wraps up the Denver Broncos. And again, I want to highlight these amazing articles that Joel and others have wrote on the site here at Club Fantasy FFL. So be sure to check that out at clubfantasyfl.com. Again, Matt wrote about the Jets, Matt Record at MattRecord21, I believe, on Twitter, and you can follow him there. You can follow Joel here, obviously, at the Joel Wirth, and of course, Andrew Metcalf. I'm trying to remember Andrew's Twitter handle off the top of my head. Do you remember it?
It's Drew something, but I don't remember.
I will look that up and get a shout out to Andrew because Andrew is a king and a good Twitter follow as well. So,
absolutely.
Either way, I want to quickly remind everybody to get that discount. Be sure to grab that Dynasty Nerd subscription. It is really such a great group of guys over there that not only do they do good work on their podcast, they have amazing tools to help out you and I on Dynasty stuff like this. I mentioned on last week's show when I first started getting into Dynasty and I first started watching film during the 2020 season when we all had that extra time on our hands, I went to Dynasty Nerds to do just that, and their film room really is just exceptional to have. So highly recommend everyone get a subscription there. You can get 15% off using code ClubFantasyFFL, or just Club Fantasy, not Club Fantasy FL, just code Club Fantasy for 15% off any Dynasty Nerd subscription. Again, you'll see it on the ticker here if you're watching on YouTube. It's been on the bottom of the screen, so you could check that out. Either way, Joel, any final words for our amazing listeners here on this wonderful Father's Day?
No, glad to be back.
That's it. Thank you,
Drew
Josh.
Matt
Drew_FF for Andrew. Please give him a follow.
Yeah, glad to be back. And like I said, happy Father's Day to everyone that applies to. And talk next week.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. And we'll talk to you next week with more Dynasty content here on the Dynasty After Party. Remember, everybody, Dynasty is like a disco ball, keeps on spinning year round. So join the club every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern right here on Club Fantasy FFL. Stay healthy, stay safe. Good to see you, Mr. Scampers. And have a happy Father's Day to you all.